Welcome one and all, it's time for a red hot, spicy, tingling, sizzling, finger-licking good, dishlicious Kings of War battle report. Not a tournament report. It's unlike me to play practice games of Kings of War, but I played 3 of them today, which are all going to be battle reports. And this first one pits the Abyssal Dwarves against the Ogres. I've got 2 tournaments coming up over the next 3 weeks. Yeah, next 2 or 3 weeks. So, practice games, and the Abyssal Dwarves have hit the table. Let's have a look at that table. So, you'll notice right down the middle there is a bit of a little hill situation going on here. That's because there's a little bit of an elevation difference in the 2 tables that we used to create this game, which is why some of the objectives have already slid off the centre line. But rest assured, they are meant to be about there. So, the Abyssal Dwarves have obviously just had a bit of a refresh. Certain units are now extra juicy, whereas before they weren't. They'd had their juice squeezed out over a long period of time, and now they've been rejuvenated and filled up with some extra juicy goodness ready to be unleashed upon the enemy. The units that benefited most, the Grotesques, definitely. That's a serious upgrade. The Grotesque Champion had a serious upgrade and also a serious points increase, so it remains to be seen whether that one is a severe upgrade. Half-breeds got a little bit of a boost. We've got some of those in here. And anyone else? Immortal Guard, which are in there as well, have a new, very cheap upgrade they can take that gives them crushing strength, much cheaper than taking the old Brew of Strength. And other units aren't in this game, but in the next battle report, or the one after that, then you'll see some other Abyssal Dwarf units in action, including the Ironcaster on the big flyer, who has lots of cool new abilities now. The ability to cast 2 spells, for example, which is very rare in Kings of War. And he might actually get some action now, with various special rules been slapped onto him. So, this is quite similar to the Abyssal Dwarf list that I was trying out before everything got better. So, let's go back and look at the list here. Now, this is you can see the name of this tournament that I'm possibly taking this to. I might tweak it though, based on how this game goes and my overall thoughts afterwards. But this is just the prototype list for that event. So, what have we got in here? We've got Immortal Guard Regiment with the Infernal Wardens upgrade, which gives them crushing strength for 15 points. And it makes a significant difference to the unit, I would say. Not only that though, but they've also got Ordered March now, so they're faster, kind of, than they were before, if you're doing certain manoeuvres with them. And they've always hit on 3s and had Vicious, which is good, but the fact that they have Crushing Strength 1 now means they are actually slightly dangerous now, in addition to being very tough to take down, with Dash 17, Defense 5. So, if you like the Immortal Guard, very good. I used to run them anyway, but now they're even better. 2 troops of gargoyles, of course, can't leave home without gargoyles, very cheap. Chaff, throw them in the way of the enemy, or save them to leap onto objectives if there's no enemies to leap in front of. 2 half-breed regiments, 1 with the Brew of Sharpness to get them to hit on 2s, which is very nice, and the other one with Blessing of the Gods, which is going to make them elite. So it's almost like hitting on 2s. So, these 2, very nasty killing machines. The upgrade they got in the book was that they gained a point of nerve, which is quite significant. And yeah, any 1 point of nerve, because of the way you roll 2d6 for a nerve test, 1 point of nerve isn't necessarily the same as thinking, well, that's just 1 extra point I need to score on the nerve test. Because the way the odds of rolling certain numbers on 2d6 work, you've got a high chance of rolling 7, and then it kind of tapers off in either direction. So it's quite significant adding a point of nerve to a unit. The Grotesques, of course, have got loads of special rules now. They've had Strider and Fury added to them, so they're really good. We've got 2 of those. Don't even need upgrades on them particularly, because they're a horde, so you'd be paying more than the half-breeds if you were to give them Brew of Sharpness or Blessing of the Gods, or most of the upgrades are more expensive if you put them onto a horde rather than a regiment, so Grotesques would be paying more for them. So I don't think they need a lot of upgrades, really. They've already got Brutal, Crushing Strength, Thunderous Charge, Strider, Regeneration, Fury, Vicious. What more would you want? Now, you could obviously upgrade them, but I don't think it's hugely necessary They're just very good as they are at the moment. Then, here's a new thing I'm testing out as well. I don't think I've ever run this unit before in my life. It's the Katsu-chan rocket launcher. The reason I'm giving it a try is because it now has 4 attacks for only 85 points. So it's competing directly with, at that point level, gargoyles. It's also competing with the Dragonfire team, which has actually had a boost as well. So we're just trying out the Katsu-chan rocket launcher, because normally with mortars they have so few attacks. I think taking 1 is almost pointless, because there's going to be a lot of times where they just hit nothing. But the fact this one has 4 attacks, you should probably hit something every turn. And blast D3, so it's going to do some damage reliably over the course of the game for only 85 points. So if the enemy want to go and chase it down, it's very inexpensive as well. We've got Susan and Bracky, who stay in. Susan didn't get a boost, but Bracky, what did Bracky gain? He gained, I think he brought Fury into his special rules, which is obviously very nice, and brings him in line with all the other Abomination units. And then we've got the Grotesque Champion with the Blade of Slashing. So, 7 attacks, so not a huge amount, but he does have Crushing Strength 2 and Thunderous. And his nerve has gone up significantly, gained Strider of course, and just overall a very nasty bit of a creature. And they all have Vicious, all the Grotesques. Most things obviously have Vicious. The only things that lack Vicious are Susan and the Gargoyles. They're the only things in there that lack it. Most things in this list have regeneration as well. Loads of regeneration flying around. And yeah, the Grotesque Champion, 225 points with that Blade of Slashing. Just for that extra 5 points, just so he's more likely to get his quality attacks through onto the enemy. With only 7, you are prone to maybe having a bad round occasionally, where you only roll like 3 hits. So getting another hit can be useful. We'll see how he does. Not been tried out in his new improved form before. Got 11 units, unit strength of 18, which is not particularly high. And I'm up against Ogres. So ignore where it says 2,300 there, because at the top it actually says, well, it says 1995 there. There may be a 5-point upgrade on here that's not represented on the list. So, Red Goblin Sharpsticks. I have a lot of cavalry and heavy cavalry and flyers that won't like to face phalanx units. We have got a viewer already in the chat. Is it Josaker or Hosaker? Tell me how to pronounce it. So, Red Goblin Sharpsticks, Phalanx, good against cavalry, and I've got lots of cavalry. The Horde also has the Crystal Pendant of Retribution, which actually makes them into a somewhat of an expensive unit at that stage, but that's quite scary because the kind of units that I have, cavalry, not only are they going to not be as effective against a phalanx unit, I'm going to have to use multiples of them if I want to kill the unit because of that, which then means multiple units could be exploding with the Crystal Pendant of Retribution. And cavalry units generally don't have nerve where they can just absorb that kind of punishment, so I'm going to have to be careful how I deal with that horde. Got 2 shooter hordes, and one of them has the piercing arrow, which I think is just a reroll, I think. There is a horde of hunters with the Helm of Confidence, so they can go out on their own and still be inspired. And they're the ensnary Pathfinder ogres, so very scary. 2 units of warriors, one with two-handed weapons with Crushing Strength 2, but a lower defense. And I think the other one has regular hand weapons and shields and a higher defense, but I'll have to see on the table. Because on the list here it shows them both as having great weapons, but I think it might be one of each. There is a giant who has Slayer D6, which is going to be useful against quite a few of my units. The Grotesques mainly. And lots of Crushing Strength, obviously very nasty. Giant, speed 7, so it's not slow. Berserker Bully, who has 8 attacks, so it's a very useful little hero for only 130 points there. Lots of attacks for something at that price. And yeah, it looks fairly scary. Let's have a look at the layout, because there's also Cuslow and Madfall, who I cut off the bottom of the list because I think he's on the next page, and there is a standard bearer there as well. And I think the standard bearer has Bane Chant. So, this is stockpile. So we've got a pile of 3 tokens dead in the centre of the table, and then along the centre line we've got 2 other piles of 2 tokens, and any one unit can only pick up 1 from a stack in each turn. So you can't just land on it and pick up all of them at the same time. You have to pick up 1 at a time, unless of course you put 2 units on it at the same time. Now you may notice that the terrain is very asymmetrical on this table. Now my opponent chose to set up the terrain and prefers games with asymmetrical terrain so that the roll-off actually has some tactical impact on deciding which side you want. So, on that basis, I won the roll-off and I chose this side, entirely because I was already standing there, not for any tactical benefit. Now, with the tokens being put down before you choose sides, I think I put this stack down here first, which means that because of the space between them, I think I prevented my opponent from putting any more tokens on this side. Because I've got this building here, I didn't want all the tokens in this sort of strip of an area here, because it's going to be difficult to fight down there and still keep a cohesive line with that building in the way. So I've got these buildings here as well, to be fair, but I found this one to be quite big and annoying right in the middle of the, well, right in the middle of where I might have wanted to deploy had all the tokens been over here. So that was my logic in my mind then, and my opponent put the other ones here. Now, my opponent also has the ability to redeploy 2 of the units, and they are 2 Ogre warrior units here and here. So they can actually set up again after these photos are taken. So let's look at the initial setup. So they are out here with Cuzlo and the Giant, suggesting that they might want to redeploy to get away from Cuzlo because he actually negatively affects your own units as well. So he's very much a lone wanderer. 2 shooter hordes there and the Berserker bully guarding them, and then 1 little regiment of the sharp sticks. Then the big regiment that goes boom when you kill them, the standard bearer and the hunters over on that side. Now, to face off against them, I've got my rocket launcher, I've got the grotesque champion and the immortal guard. So I've not committed heavy resources over onto the left-hand side of the table at all. One of them is fast and very easy to reposition, and the other one is a shooting attack. I've got the main core of my army, this huge blob here. Right at the front, I've got Basusu and Braki, who's turned sideways, of course, to steal an extra half an inch or however much it is in the first turn, just from pivoting forwards. So, why have I gone like this with everything bunched up together? Well, the 2 main piles of tokens I want here. Now, these buildings are in the way, which I actually obscured them from my view with some of my units and forgot they were there during deployment. But I think it's fine because my 2 individuals here are going to go straight forward, and their goal is to attack the shooter units if they get the chance, because I want to tie them up while I advance. And I'm going to have to take some shooting. The half-breeds don't want to take too much shooting. They're only defense 4, so they're much more vulnerable to being shot. The grotesques are much more survivable, with defense 5 and a higher nerve as well. The gargoyles can be used to just sit in front of my stuff, so that if they want to shoot me, there would be cover. Or if they want to shoot the gargoyles, that's okay, because they're worthless. But ideally, I would rather have some gargoyles intact to throw in front of the enemy when we get into combat time, if the enemy are maybe going to redeploy over here or stay here, because they're going to be coming in and being dangerous. I do have the speed edge mostly. Cuzlo's pretty fast, the Giant's pretty fast, but mostly I've got the speed, I've got more flyers, and I've got more cavalry. I don't think my opponent has anything speed 8 apart from Cuzlo. I think everything else is below that, so that means that all my flyers and the half-breeds are the fastest things on the table. So I'm quite pleased about that. The Immortal Guard could theoretically go and work on those tokens if they wanted to, but I'm not going to be too aggressive on this side, probably. The Grotesques and the Gargoyles and maybe Susan and these guys, anything here, these are all fast, they could all start coming this way if I need to. Grotesque's going to have to pick a side because the buildings are in the way. So, let's have a look. And the 2 Ogre warrior units decide to redeploy over onto the left. Interesting, so they were over here and now they are up there. So my opponent is leaving this flank a little bit bare with only the Giant and Cuzlo over there, and everything else in that sort of bundle there, and my army is slightly off to the right, whereas my opponent's is now slightly off to the left, because that's really a gun battery there. They're not going to be moving too much. So, there is the overview with the final positions after the redeployment, and how am I feeling about it? Okay, because I don't see too much of a threat as I move in on this gun encampment with my individuals and my fast units. So I'm going to try and get at least this block, all these units straight forward, and if I have to use someone to tie up those two on the flanks, then maybe Bracky or some gargoyles could go over there to block them off for a turn while I'm advancing, because you don't want someone staring into your flank. I'm not worried about being flanked from this side because I've got the buildings there, and I've also got the Immortal Guard preventing anyone passing down here. And the Grotesque Champion, I'm going to see what he does. If he gets a good chance to get a nice charge in, then I might take that and see if he can do some damage to an Ogre Horde on his own. Because his nerve is actually about the same as an Ogre Horde. He's just got fewer attacks. So if he gets the first hit in, he could certainly do a job on them, and then the rocket launcher is just going to try and thin out some of those units as well. Okay, so my opponent has gone first, and is advancing heartily towards the objectives, with the standard bearer moving in behind there. So these guys are on the hill, meaning if they charge down, of course, they get some thunderous charge. And look at all the damage this half-breed unit has taken. They're up to 10 wounds, but they are inspired, so they manage to cling on, and don't even get wavered, which is good. You do not want to get wavered from shooting when everyone's got fury. So the giant is actually behind the woods. So not in the woods, which is important, because it now doesn't have much of a line of sight. It can see pretty much down that sort of a line. So I can advance this way, but Cuslow is there though. So I have to be wary of Cuslow. Turn 1 for me. So Bracky, but Cuslow is facing this way, importantly. So he's not a threat now. So Cuslow obviously could keep running and get behind my lines, but that's going to take him some time. So I've put Bracky here. The only thing I've got in the charge arc of the giant and in its range is the troop of gargoyles who have just jumped in front of the half-breeds, just so that any shooting that goes at this unit would suffer from a cover penalty. And does that mean they're less likely to target the unit? Probably not, because they're already on 9 wounds, so you don't have to get many hits through to finish them off. And they don't regenerate a lot of them by the looks of it. Grotesque's moving up here, making sure that Cuslow can't charge them, but also they're hanging back a bit, because I can't just throw everything forward, because I'll miss all the tokens. So the Grotesques are hoping to be involved in the cleanup of this side, featuring the giant. And I've decided that these units are going to be the main ones I'm using to take down this area here. So, in order to do that, I need the gargoyles to not get shot, because as I'm advancing, the gargoyles need to be leaping onto the other units that I'm not fighting yet. And I think I've got my half-breeds within range of this shooter unit here, within charge range there. And most of the others are... Let's see, the Grotesques are out of charge range. These half-breeds I think are in charge range of that unit, and obviously both lots of gargoyles are. These ones leapt over onto the tokens though, so they've picked up a token. So, if they want to fly away, they would have to drop it first, which they may be prepared to do, and Susan, of course, can be thrust into any of these units as well. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. The fact the half-breeds survived the first volley, so they're going to have to be taken out this turn, which means the other unit is very likely to survive. So I'm quite satisfied with how this is looking on the right-hand side. On the left, I decide, you know what, I'm going to throw in the Grotesque Champion into those hunters. And he has a couple of wounds, disappointing, but the rocket launcher wavers the warriors at the back of the hill there. And the reason I targeted them is because they would have obviously been able to charge the Grotesque Champion. So nice to waver them. So hopefully he should be able to survive a round against them at least, and then hit them again. And look at that lovely blurry image. So, the Immortal Guard and the Grotesques is back up here. I'm not going to be too eager to massacre that unit and let them explode on me, but we'll see. Into my opponent's turn, and the exploding sharpsticks go into the Immortal Guard. Cuslow heads off down here, and the giant, I think, shuffles a bit, so that, let's have a look. shuffles a bit that way so that my half-breeds can't see him anymore because he's not in their arc. If he'd stayed there, these guys would have been able to charge in, but now they can't. So, tokens are picked up by the Ogre warriors on this hill. And they're safely behind the sharp sticks. They're not worried about being hit by anything. Apart from Susan. So, never underestimate Susan's ability to charge something that's very far away. By the way, if anyone wants to like this video, feel free. Okay, let's see. The half-breeds take more shooting damage, and they are dead. Which is okay. I was going to lose something to shooting, and as you can see, I have everything else available. And these sharp sticks have actually put themselves in a position that means my gargoyles have their flank. They are carrying a token, but the fact that they are carrying a token means that it was going to be annoying for them to fly off. But now that there's a unit right in their charge range, they can actually charge the flank of that unit and keep the token, which is a bonus. Which is going to then allow me to put these units into the others there. So, 4 damage onto the Immortal Guard. And the Grotesque Champion goes down. So, my opponent here rolled, I think, about 10 hits and got 9 wounds out of them on 4+. It was something ridiculous like that. So lots of wounds, and then rolled well on the nerve as well, of course, and killed it. So yeah, that can happen sometimes. Grotesque Champion, dead. So what am I going to do this turn? Well, because of the precise angles involved here, the half-breeds can fit past this unit to touch the shooters at the back there, which is the unit I want, because that's the one I left myself within range to charge. So, Susan has to get out of the way, so she's going to charge somebody. I think she's going to try and get this unit in the flank. Gargoyles into the flank there, and these gargoyles, once the half-breeds have gone past, the gargoyles are then going to charge into the other unit of shooters to hold them up for a turn. And these grotesques are not too scared because the giant is hiding. So that gives them a bit of a free rein to either come over this way or that way if I felt like I needed help there. Turn 2, Bracky charges into Cuzlo. It's 4 wounds, just trying to tie it up because I don't want it annoying my flank for the rest of the game. Grotesques actually move up, not too scared. They've angled themselves so they can see the giant if it wants to go into the woods, and it can also see it over here in case this goes horribly wrong. I've got the charge in with the gargoyles. The half-breeds kill the unit of shooters they charge into, which is nice. The gargoyles actually do a bit of damage as well. And these gargoyles, who took the flank charge on the sharp stick regiment, killed them. So gargoyles actually killed something, which is impressive for them. I put my grotesques and the Immortal Guard into this exploding unit and waver them, which is really good because it blocks up the enemy a little bit. And Susan went into the flank of this unit and did 4 wounds. And the Katsuchan rocket launcher fires and finishes off this unit here. So that's another unit of warriors dead, and it's just this one left here, who are dealing with Susan. And overall, I'd say that's a pretty solid turn there. Turn 3 for my opponent. So the giant gets out of the charge arc of the grotesques and comes off down this way to help out Cuzlo and Madfall. These guys can't do much, and the warriors countercharge Susan. She should be alright for a round against them. And the hunters decide to chase after the Katsuchan rocket launcher, which I can understand because it did have 2 good rounds and killed off a full horde of ogres. I can understand chasing after it, but that's one of the reasons something like this would be in a list, and one of the reasons I didn't put it right at the back of the table is because all the ogre units that could feasibly chase it down and kill it are quite useful for actually contesting all the tokens and holding them in the middle of the board. So if they're coming off all the way down here, if I put it right on the back edge, they wouldn't have bothered because it's just too far. But putting it further up means the enemy will be tempted to send something after it, and it's only 85 points. So there's something to think about with your war machines there. Keeping them safe isn't always the best option if they're very cheap, and the enemy has to commit something to go after them if they want to take it down. Berserker Bully, with its 8 attacks, it is definitely a threat to that half-breed regiment, we'll see. And those gargoyles should get killed quite easily by the shooters in combat. Susan gets wavered, which is okay because, of course, she can, being an individual, she'll be able to get out of harm's way by turning to face, for example, to the side and then going backwards 5 inches over there, because she's an individual. And over here, the Katsuchan rocket launcher gets killed. The half-breeds take 7 wounds. The gargoyles die as expected, but we've got another fresh unit of gargoyles back here who can jump in their place. And Bracky only takes 2 wounds from Cuzlo, which is fine. And it's looking quite good, I think. So we're going to be able to put the gargoyles in there to hold up the shooters. Hopefully the half-breeds kill the Berserker Bully in 1 round. We have Mr. Hawley in the chat. Good evening. You've entered just as this is about to reach the spice stage. So I should be able to kill off this horde with these 2 units now. And I could probably do with killing it off because I need to turn around and avoid being flank charged by the berserkers over there. Susan is wavered, so she just has to get out of the way. And as far as the token situation, the ogres are holding quite a few. Which ones am I holding? The gargoyles have one. And I think that's it. So I need to start thinking about the tokens now. Into my turn 3. So Bracky kills off Cuzlo, and the grotesques come over this way. There is no way for the giant to escape from the arc and the charge range of the grotesques, so it's just going to have to turn around and absorb it in the front, or charge and pray that he kills Bracky in 1 round and then is able to turn and look at them. Grotesques have picked up one of the tokens as well. I managed to kill the Berserker Bully with the half-breeds, which is good, and regenerated a wound. The gargoyles, the second unit of gargoyles, into this unit of shooters, so just trading off my chaff so I can get to the good stuff. Susan just backs up out the way, being an individual, very handy there, so she is now safe for the round. And I do kill off the horde, and the Immortal Guard turn to face the hunters, who have Pathfinder though, so it's not going to save them probably, they're already on 7 wounds, and the grotesques will be safe-ish for now though. I think the grotesques are safe from being charged by this unit, but not the hero there, which I think is the standard bearer, so it's not that scary. So, into my opponent's turn, we've got the berserkers. Are they even called berserkers? Let's go with that. So, they charge into the Immortal Guard. We'll see if they actually are immortal after this combat. And the standard bearer into the grotesques. And then this unit of warriors disrespect being shown to Susan here. They turn their back on her. And they just don't respect Susan whatsoever. Which is fair because it doesn't matter which way you're facing. She's going to get her normal number of attacks whichever facing she hits. And the giant, as expected, turns to face the grotesques. But now that they all have Strider, that little bit of forest that you're standing in there, Mr. Giant, ain't going to save you. So, the Immortal Guard are not immortal, they get killed. And we determine that they are in the flank of the grotesques at the moment, so they don't need to move. We've got Red John in the chat. Go the ogres. Well, I think you may be slightly biased in favour of this ogre army. The shooters kill off the gargoyles. All they have to do is now absorb a fresh charge from this regiment of half-breeds. This is the elite regiment, and they're already on 6 wounds, so I don't like their chances of survival there. And they turn to face, though. So, what is about to happen? John F says, hands. Were there hands there? Yes, look at those human hands. Okay, so this is what's left, and things have been dying at a pretty solid rate. What do we expect to die now? The shooters should die. Taken some damage already, and they're looking at a very powerful unit. The giant is going to get double charged by 2 good fighting units, so is a decent chance of dying, but he does have very high nerve, so it's definitely not a guarantee. Down here, the grotesques should be able to kill a standard bearer in 1 go. They'll be very disappointed if they don't. And Susan is going to have a go at this unit, and if she can waver them, then that's going to be enough. as far as the tokens, we've still got a pile of them here. My gargoyles had to drop one of them when they flew off and charged these guys. So there's a token just sitting there. There's a pile of 2 there. One here, one under the grotesques. There are 2 on this warrior regiment. And I think that's all of them. So, charge into the giant, 15 damage, but don't quite kill it. That's not too bad though, because since I'm going into different facings, he wouldn't be able to, for example, countercharge Bracky and then overrun into the grotesques if he killed Bracky. Since they're on different facings, he's just going to be able to pick one of them, and I don't think a giant on average is going to kill this horde in one round. The standard bearer manages to survive as well. Against the odds, this is just a really poor round of attacks from the grotesques here. And Susan does manage to kill the warriors that were holding 2 tokens. So turn your back on Susan and you'll pay the price. A heavy, heavy price. And the half-breeds, of course, kill off the shooters, as expected. So it's still looking very healthy. Didn't kill all the units then, but my opponent is rapidly running out of options to pick up tokens here. There's a standard bearer who could start making his way towards them, because there's one there and one here that have just been discarded on the ground by the dead units because Susan can't pick them up. My half-breed's going to start moving down towards picking up these tokens, and my grotesques have got one there. This area should be wrapped up. Now, if the giant got very lucky and killed the grotesques in one round, which isn't impossible, it's just very, very unlikely, then the giant could steal a token, and I would have no scoring units over there to pick up tokens with. So I've paid a lot of points for these 2 individuals, but it can come back and bite you if things start dying rapidly and you run out of units that can hold tokens or even hold territory. So we've got a flank charge from these berserkers. Are they berserkers or hunters? Why am I forgetting that? Standard bearer in the front again, of course. Giant has a go at the grotesques. And over here, they are successful in killing off this grotesque unit. And this one only takes 4 wounds though, so they're absolutely fine. Turn 5. The giant is dead. Of course the giant's dead. He's already on 15 wounds, gets hit by these 2 units again. And now they turn around and they've got time to go and pick up another token in a minute. Susan kills the standard bearer. Now, the reason she went for that, even though it's a less threatening unit, is because, if we go back here, this situation, if I charge these hunters... Are they even called hunters? Why am I confused as to whether they're called hunters or berserkers? You know what I could do? I could just look at the army list. I'm going to do that right now, in fact. They are called berserkers, aren't they? Not hunters. Surely. Finding a nice picture of the army list here. If I get it wrong, obviously, then it discredits the entire video. Okay, why do I keep calling them the wrong name then? Do they have a unit called berserkers? Yeah, they are hunters. Are the berserker braves the different ones that have 30 attacks? I think that's the unit I'm thinking of. So that's the difference between them. The berserkers have 1 billion attacks. What else do berserkers have going for them? They don't have ensnare. Okay, yep, that explains it. So, if I hit the standard bearer, it can't then go and pick up tokens, and because it's nimble, it can more easily get to them than this unit of hunters can. So, let's go back to where we were. So, Susan obviously putting herself in harm's way, she gets killed by the hunters. She was already a bit wounded. And that's all that the ogres can really do. And on my turn, the grotesque just pick up another token. The half-breeds pick up another token and stay out of the line of sight of the hunters. And that's where the game's going to end. So, a bit of a bloodbath. Grotesques and half-breeds left holding loads of tokens. There are 2 tokens just sitting there on the ground. And Bracky is still alive. And the ogre hunters are alive, untouched. Those are the only units left on the table. Just lots of killing was done, left and right. And thoughts on the unit improvements. So the Grotesques, it feels a lot better sending them into battle with Fury and Strider. You can throw them in willy-nilly, and those were upgrades that I would have normally bought for the units in the past. Those are the kind of things you would buy for Grotesques before they got them for free. So, really good. The half-breeds getting that extra point of nerve is very important. As you saw, they just survived at the start of the game from that big shooting onslaught. So, had they 1 point less, then they could have potentially either died or been wavered as a result of that. So, quite significant. The Grotesque champion, we didn't manage to see his best because a particularly spiky attack went in against him when nearly all the wounds were converted. So he just died immediately. But we'll see more of him in the future. And the Immortal Guard with the extra crushing strength, they didn't have a particularly good role in this game. I suppose holding up the enemy. But that big exploding horde was kind of all they were tasked with dealing with, and then they were just blocking to prevent the Grotesques being charged by things. So they did alright. They'll have better matchups in the future. There was nothing particularly exciting for them to go after in this game. And Bracky and Susan still do the work as always. Susan did a good job killing off an important unit. And yeah, this flank went very well, of course. The enemy did, of course, choose to move and redeploy the two strong units from this side over to about here, which meant that they did gain kind of more supremacy over here, which is why there's one ogre unit left on this side and nowhere else. But it did allow me to get into the middle, kind of unopposed, because most of them kind of went down here or stayed back here as the shooting battery. So yeah, this whole area, I don't feel like the ogres really made a push to go after these tokens here with the buildings in the way, which could have prevented me from getting to them. So yeah, overall went well. Quite pleased with the Abyssal Dwarf new improved unit profiles. And see, Pforson got man flu. Watched your Clash of Kings battle reports today. Thanks for keeping me company whilst I have the plague. Well, obviously, while you're ill, the only thing you can really do that's of any worth is to sit back and absorb red-hot tactical spicy info, really, isn't it? Which you can then take into your games when you're recovered. Because obviously you wouldn't be able to apply this level of tactical mastery while suffering from an ailment of any kind. Okay, so it's about time to wrap this one up. There will be 2 more battle reports coming. I'm not going to put them up tonight. I may record them tonight and then just release them over the next few days, just so they're not all coming out at once. The next one is very similar armies to these two, except it's 2,300 points, which is a potential warm-up for a different tournament, which is a higher point level. And then I also got the Night Stalkers out for a game against the Ogres as well, and that's at 2,000 points. And we also try the other 2 scenarios that are new or updated from the Clash of Kings book. So there is, I can't remember what it's called now, but the one with the 3 middle sections. It's a bit like Control, but there's only 3 sections in the middle of the table. And the other one is the modified push scenario. So the changes to that so that each unit can only hold 1 token at a time. So we do play those. And you can look forward to seeing those over the next few days. The 2 tournaments coming up, not very far away now. I've still got some painting to do. I've got to paint the special festive model for one of them. I've already painted my snowman for one of the Christmas themed events. The other one I've got a Krampus here which I'm working on. And on the painting table I also have my Abyssal Dwarf Dragonfire team, which was half painted, and then I realised actually the rules are poor, I'm never going to use this, so I'm just going to leave it half painted in a box. But they've improved it now, so it might actually be worth taking at some point. At 85 points, it does compete with the Katsu-chan rocket launcher that did a great job in this game. And I do like it. Much more reliable than a big mortar, because of the more attacks. And a reliable drip of damage over the course of the game, rather than the spikes that you might get from something with fewer attacks, but more potent attacks. So I like it. It's cheap. Not, I think, 120 points for the big mortar, isn't it? Something like that. which is quite a lot for something that doesn't score and might miss every time it shoots because it doesn't have a lot of attacks. So it's not going to hit very often. So people often take more of them, but then it gets quite expensive. So, in the higher point level Abyssal Dwarf game, you're going to see the new Ironcaster with the big flyer, which is going to be very exciting, with all these new abilities like Radiance of Life and access to different spells, casting 2 spells at once, gaining extra spell dice from being around half-breeds and grotesques. That's going to be very exciting to see. So you can look forward to seeing that very soon. And other than that, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, obviously, and follow all the links in the description for the various social media shenanigans. There's Twitter, Discord server, Facebook group, and all that malarkey. And obviously, if you want this channel to keep delivering a fresh shipment of red hot, spicy, succulent, juicy tactical goodness to your senses via the internet on a regular basis, then why not pledge your entire life savings over to me via Patreon or PayPal so that I can play a billion games, attend a billion tournaments, and then explain exactly why I won or didn't win so that you can learn from the master. Okay, time to wrap this one up. Thanks for people in the chat, of course. I'll probably set the next 2 videos as premieres as well, which means that you get kind of a live chat effect while it goes live for the first time, to try and mimic this live chat. Except obviously I won't be able to respond because it'll be pre-recorded. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.